My name is Courtney Steerwalt, and I am the 4-H Animal Science Extension Specialist. And this evening, I am joined by Ziamara Vargas Diaz, who serves as our new member initiative audience extension specialist here in Indiana. And this evening, we are also joined by Angie Frost and Rachel Hazelby. Angie is the 4-H Healthy Living Specialist, and Rachel is the Computer Science Specialist for Extension. And Angie also has a Teens as Teachers presenter who will be working with her this evening to present their topic. Madison Powell of Tipton County. Madison is a state teen teacher who's been helping us for the past few years. And so we're super excited today to talk to you about what you need to do, what you need to know to be successful, as well as experiential learning. Did I say that right, Angie? Yes. Okay. All right. So I'd just like to make a couple reminders before we begin. Please make sure that you are on mute. We also ask that you make sure that your chat box is open, and that if you can, make sure again that you're participating via the chat box when prompted to. We also ask that you make sure to check out the Teens as Teacher webpage, and I'll post that in the chat box again to remind you where that is at, to check out where all of the resources can be found that will be referenced this evening as well as last week. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Angie and Madison.
Actually,
Rachel's first.
Rachel, sorry. I'm looking at the screen and I see Delaney and I'm like, what is happening? I apologize. Rachel, we'll turn it over to Rachel. Sorry about that.
It's all good. All right, so just to warn you, after I've got a presentation and then we're going to do a little activity, and you're going to need a piece of paper. It looks like I'm going to have to turn my background off to do this. But so you'll need just a piece of paper. It can be lined paper, it can be plain paper, it can be the back of your homework, it doesn't matter. Just whatever you have, but I wanted to give you some warning in case you needed to yell to a younger sibling or someone to bring it to you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And pull that up. Hi, I am so glad you're here. My name is Rachel Hazelby, and I am the Computer Science Specialist for the state. Tonight, I'm going to talk about experiential learning and why it is important to use it when teaching. We're going to think of times when you've experienced experiential learning in your own life and how you learned from it, and what you would have done differently or what you would have done the same if you'd been teaching the lesson yourself. Experiential learning is more than just doing. It is reflecting while and after doing. It is applying what you have done to gain new knowledge. Students learn by questioning, investigating, experimenting, being curious, problem solving, assuming responsibility, and being creative. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that at some event, somewhere, most of you have built a tower out of marshmallows and spaghetti. Solid guess? Okay. Let's think about what you learned that day or during that lesson. You learned a little bit about load and load-bearing things. You learned about distribution of mass. You learned about compression and tension. And you learned that weak material can be made strong because of the shape that you form it into. When your leader, instructor, teacher, whoever it was, put those marshmallows and that spaghetti down on the table, is that what you thought that you would learn? Is that what you were intending to learn when you started? Or did you just go, oh, cool, marshmallows? Another question, reflect on this for a couple minutes or a couple seconds. Did you realize that you had learned those things? Did you realize that you learned about load and tension before I told you? Something to think about. So there are 4 stages of experiential learning cycle. There's the action stage, which anchors students in a common context so they can reflect together. There's the reflection and conceptualization stage, where the teacher helps students identify and name their observations as a specific knowledge or skill. And there is the application and generalization stage, where students apply what they've learned to new contexts. In the action stage, students will do things such as make a product, role play, create presentations, problem solve, or play a game. In the reflection and conceptualization stage, they will share results, they will share reactions, they will make observations with peers, they will listen to other peers talk about their own experiences, they'll share their reactions, I already said all that. Oh, and they'll discuss their feelings on whatever it may be. In the generalization and application stage, they're going to connect their experience with real-world examples. They're going to find trends, they're going to find common truths, and identify the real-life principles. And they're also going to apply that. They're going to say, how can I take this experience and apply it to something different, to a different situation? And how can this make me a better learner? Which is really the goal of experiential learning, is really to teach our youth how to be better learners. So the basic requirements of experiential learning is that it is going to be, whatever the problem is, it's going to be inspired by real world problems or whatever's being taught. Almost always it's going to require collaboration. People are going to work together. It's very authentic, and authentic in this case means that it's very real. It's something that you might encounter in real life, not just a classroom. So it has a lot more meaning, and you tend to be able to extract meaning from that experience because it's so authentic and because it's just a very real experience. So at my very first job as a teacher, my principal says to me, is trying to explain what experiential learning is, or how to craft a lesson plan, and he says, begin with the end in mind, and just kind of drops it like I completely understood what he was talking about. I had no clue what he was talking about. So I nodded and pretended like I knew what I was doing. Highly recommend not doing that. Ask questions. But so then, and because I'm me, I went and I looked it up and I did some research, and I figured out that what begin with the end in mind means is that you just need to think about what you want your students to learn when they walk out the door at the end of the lesson. What did they learn? And then go backwards and think about how to get them to learn that. So there's a lot of different ways to get somebody to learn, for instance, about how to create something that's load-bearing, or create a bridge out of, and using marshmallows and spaghetti sticks is only one way to do that. And there's lots and lots of other ways. One of them is just to stand up and talk about it and hope that they soak something in. But I'm guessing that when that very first teacher who came up with that very first marshmallow and spaghetti tower or bridge project, when they came up with that, they were sitting there thinking, I really want my students to learn how loads are distributed. And from there, they came up with the whole spaghetti and marshmallows tower building or bridge building contests. And at the end of the day, when their students were done, I am willing to bet that very same teacher sat down, and I don't know who this teacher is. Sadly, they've been lost in history, but I'm willing to bet that teacher sat down with his students or her students and said, here are the concepts that you guys learned today. These are the things that you did, and these are the things that you learned. Now, on top of all those engineering concepts and load bearing and mathematics and things like that, they probably learned some extra things that they didn't plan on learning or didn't think about teaching even, and that would have been communication skills. Those students not only learned how to build a tower or a bridge, but they also learned how to talk to their peers and how to talk to their partners. They learned teamwork. They learned how to work together and get things done that way. So there's more than just books and paper to learning. A lot of it is learning how to communicate and get your thoughts out also. There are a lot of reasons to use experiential learning in a teaching situation. One of the biggest is that it gives your teacher, or gives the teacher, in this case you, a chance to provide relevant, meaningful resources, but not stand up and lecture and stand on the stage and direct people and do for them. They get to move around, they get to explain and answer questions and interact, and quite frankly, watching people learn and just standing back and watching them figure out and make the connections and discover for themselves is what makes experiential learning truly fun and makes teaching truly fun. Just standing up and delivering information gets very dull and boring, and helping people make connections is where things get really, really fun. So we've talked about how experiential learning can be a great way to teach because it's fun for the teacher and they don't have to be the absolute expert in everything, but instead guide kids to figuring things out on their own. But it's also a great way for students to learn. It gives them the freedom to experience and figure things out on their own. They're going to learn things and don't have to rely on the teacher. Actually, I said that wrong. They're going to learn that they don't have to rely on the teacher to learn things. So they don't assume that the teacher's the expert and the student doesn't know anything, and they'll only learn what the teacher tells them. They're going to learn how to figure things out on their own. But that doesn't mean that the teacher isn't involved. So if you think back to your marshmallow and spaghetti sticks, the teacher didn't walk around and tell you how to put the marshmallow on the spaghetti, but they may have said, what if you try this with your tower? Or what if you try this with your bridge? And given you suggestions on how to, and usually they actually are formed in what ifs. What if you try this? Or I wonder if you tried this, it would do whatever. So that's a really important and awesome part of experiential learning, is that kids get to think and figure out things on their own. But most importantly, at the end of the learning, or sometimes right in the middle of the learning, it just depends on when questions pop up, the content is discussed. So it's still, even though the teacher might not be the expert, at the end, they're going to bring it all together. They're going to talk about, well, we learned these, we learned these 3 things today, and this is how we're going to apply it to real world, or how would you apply these to your own world? Don't hesitate to ask questions. And speaking of, I am going to move on to the next slide, but are there any more questions, or are there any questions that I can help you answer? That was real. Are there any questions that I can answer? So I have a question because I meant to ask it right at the beginning. Have any of you actually done the marshmallow and spaghetti towers, or was I just like hopeful? You have. Okay. So some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay. Highly recommend it. It's actually super fun. It really is. I mean, over and above that you're actually learning, it's pretty fun. So I'm glad I chose that. Good. Okay. So obviously that's a really hard project to do online and demonstrate online. If we were live all in one room, I probably would actually do that today. But sadly, we can't. So instead, and I'll probably need help, but we're going to actually just learn a little bit about free thinking and see toothpicks. I've never tried it with toothpicks. Sorry, I get distracted very easily. I should probably turn my chat off and let other people talk. So get your paper, and my children told me that you need to fold it. I didn't teach elementary school. Fold it in hamburger and hot dog. So you have 4 sections. Does that sound right? Okay. From there, I want you to just draw in the first quadrant. I just want you to draw an organic shape. Any shape you want. And I'm not going to show you mine. You're going to take about 10-15 seconds and just draw an organic shape. I did a bad job. Can you do that? Can you do a bad job on an organic shape?
Rachel, what do you mean by organic shape?
Well, okay, that's a really good point. So let's talk about what is organic. Anybody want to shout out or put in the chat what is organic? What is an organic shape?
Like a square.
What's that?
A square.
A square is not organic because if you go out into nature, you're not going to see any squares. So what do you see out in nature that's organic, that's made in nature?
A tree.
A tree.
Yeah.
A hexagon.
A hexagon?
Yes, honeycomb.
Okay, so you win me. You won there. Okay, you're right. I was thinking more like blob-like. So like maybe circular or soft edges. I don't know. Can you see? You can't even see mine.
Flubber. Googly googly glop.
Yes, gloop, slime. Just a big blob, pond shaped.
Natural shape.
Yeah. Organic.
Anything that does not have a name, like square, rectangle,
Yes.
hexagon.
Not a hexagon. Even though those are found in nature.
Just a doodle. A doodle.
Yeah.
Thank you. A doodle. All right. So once you get your shape, give it some eyes. I really wish I had a marker instead of just a pen. And actually just give it a face. Whether it needs a nose or not is up to you. And maybe I'm going to throw some legs on mine. And just one really big arm. And I'm going to turn off my background because you might actually be able to see it if I do that. And I have taken this organic shape, and you still can't see it. You can kind of see it. And drawn a monster. Isn't he cute? I have cute monsters at my house because I'm a girl mom. Our monsters are not scary. So then take your second square and now draw, well, non-organic shapes, or I just completely spaced the word, geometric shapes. Thank you. I don't know how I forgot that word. Draw some geometric shapes. Draw anywhere between 2 and 4 shapes together so that they're overlapping and touching. And geometric is, yes, those things that you're going to hear about in math class. So, or in a beehive. We good? Everybody got theirs? Got theirs? All right, so I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Oh yeah, a little bit. Okay, so check that out though. I can actually add to it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add wheels to this and make him, and put a face on the top one. And antennas. And now I have a robot. All right, how much more time do I have?
You have about nine minutes.
Oh, okay. Well,
But-
I don't think this is going to fill that.
No, that's
Okay, because
here's what you need.
I can go on, but I don't necessarily need to, because basically what I'm trying to do is demonstrate to you, and this is my demonstration of experiential learning also. We did a little thing, and we talked about organic and how cool that was, so maybe even brought a little biology into things, although that wasn't my intent. And we talked about geometric, maybe brought a little mathematics into it, which also wasn't my intent. My intent was to get you to be able to be creative. And that's what, as a teacher, I would stop and I would say, okay, so today we learned how to take something as simple as a doodle on the side of our paper and turn it into a really not scary monster or a really fun robot with wheels and antennas. And that's what experiential learning is that bringing it back and talking to everyone about it. And this is also where I would say, actually what I probably should have said instead of what I just did was, you know, put you on the spot. Hannah, what did you learn? Shelby, what did you learn? And do it that way. And I'm not going to do that to you because I think that's uncomfortable on Zoom. But if you want to share that, I will listen. And if you have questions, I will listen.
So do you want us to share like what we did?
If you want to, I would
Okay.
love that.
So for my organic shape, what I did
You
was
can't do
I
it
drew,
background.
Put it close to your chest. That might help.
all right. So for my organic one, what I did was, can you guys see it now? I drew a tree, because that's kind of my organic shape, and put eyebrows, eyes, a nose, and a face. And then for my non-organic shape, for my geometric, I kind of, before she started that they had to be together, I drew the circle, but then I added the triangle, a square, and then that one, and then added legs and then a face to it. And it's kind of like a person sitting, you could say, but I'm not really sure. Whatever you'd like to call it, go for it. So that's what I did.
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to share. My organic thing, I drew what reminded me of a pond and then put a face on it. And because mullets rock, I had to add a nice hairstyle to it. And then for my non-organic, I started off with the square and then just decided to build from there. And I don't know, it kind of reminds me of a seat of some sort with maybe a blob sitting on it. I don't know. I'm not sure, but those were the two I drew.
Very cool.
Mine completely unironically ended up shaped like Wisconsin, which I did not intend to do. It kind of looks like Wisconsin. And then I messed up on the second one and had to redraw it to connect them. So
I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. That was my bad.
Oh, mine kind of looks like a pond with a face and arms. And then this one kind of looks like what I did in geometry today.
So for mine, I did like a cloud, I guess, kind of shape. And I just gave it some arms and a face. And then for my other one, I did a triangle, circle, square, and then like a hexagon like shape, and I kind of turned it into like a little grandma.
You have
I
like
like
perfect
that.
lines.
That's a really nice robot.
Yeah, great lines.
See, so now this is where I should say, okay, everyone, this is how this is creativity. It's okay to do silly things and have fun and all of that. And that's really all experiential learning is doing something cool and fun and teaching with it also. Yes, the attack of the robot grandmas. There you go. Actually, mine's a little grandma-like too. All right, can I answer any questions about experiential learning or what it would feel like to teach a group of kids, whether it's online or in person, a experiential type lesson, a project-based lesson?
Hi, how would you do experiential learning for different age groups, like younger kids versus older kids? Like, how would you kind of determine what to use for each age group? Because it might connect to some kids and not connect to others based on like where they are at, like intelligence wise.
Yes. Okay, so are you talking about in the same group or in different groups?
Kind of both, I
Both?
guess. Like,
Okay.
how would you kind of approach that if you did have a mixed group of kids and if you did have them kind of individualized?
Okay,
How
so
you would approach that?
last week we talked about ages and stages. So I would definitely use those resources because they are really very, very good. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not super comfortable with younger kids, and so other than my own usually. And anyway, so I use that chart when I have to work with third and fourth graders. I use that chart and I look at it and I'm okay. This is what I need to expect from them. So I definitely would use that. Younger kids, I think you're going to find that they're all going to really like the hands-on stuff. They're going to want to do that. Now, if I have a mixed group, I'm going to put an older kid in charge of a couple younger kids because they've been that age a lot more recently than you have or I have, and therefore they know what it's like and what it feels like, and they usually handle it pretty good. The other advantage to doing that is they're going to learn more, because when you're teaching somebody something, you learn a lot more than you do if you're just doing it or reading it. So those are my two biggest recommendations. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions for Rachel? Again, I like how she pointed out how we're connecting all of these different sessions together because they are fundamental in helping you grow throughout this experience. So if at any time you have a question that you've had a chance to think about, feel free to pop that in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer that. Most of us are going to be joining on the various weeks, so we're happy to help even if you have a minute to think about something. That's kind of the nice thing about splitting it up is you actually have time to apply the concepts. So if no one else has any question, we'll give Rachel a virtual round of applause and thank her for her time this evening. Again, she'll be here all night, so feel free to drop a chat in the chat box to her or let us know if you have any follow-up questions.